The year is 1945, and the world is exhaling smoke. Berlin is a skeleton of brick and ash, Hiroshima a shadow etched on concrete, and the Atlantic still coughs up rusted helmets from the deep. You, sitting in your quiet living room with the faint tick of a grandfather clock, remember the headlines, the ration books, the blackouts. You were there, or your parents were, or the neighbor who never spoke of the camp tattoo under his sleeve. History books close the chapter with VE Day and VJ Day, neat ribbons on a bloody gift. But the ribbons are lies. Beneath them, 10 secrets, banned, buried, and guarded by men who took oaths in blood, still pulse like unexploded ordnance. Tonight, we defuse them one by one, not with shovels, but with the slow, deliberate voice of memory. Stay with me. Some of these truths will feel like betrayal, others like absolution. All of them will remind you why you never forgot the sound of air raid sirens. Secret 1 begins in a place you know by name, but not by nightmare. Bletchley Park, a country estate in Buckinghamshire, where the roses still bloom and the ghosts still type. In 1939, a Polish mathematician named Marian Rejewski smuggled 3 suitcases across Europe. Inside were not clothes, but wooden replicas of the German Enigma machine. Rotors, plug boards, the whole infernal cipher box. The British took one look and built a village of geniuses around it. By 1941, they had Colossus, the world's first programmable electronic computer, a hulking beast of vacuum tubes that hummed louder than the bombers overhead. Official history says Enigma was cracked in 1943. That is a polite fiction. It was cracked in 1940, fully, irrevocably, and the proof is in the silence that followed. Imagine Winston Churchill at his desk, a glass of Pole Roger sweating beside the blotter, reading tomorrow's U-boat positions before the Kriegsmarine even plotted them. He could have ended the Battle of the Atlantic in 6 months. Instead, he let convoys burn. Why? Because every saved ship would have told Berlin that Enigma was naked. The greater secret is the ledger Churchill kept. 14,000 merchant sailors drowned so that D-Day could land unopposed. Their names are not on the cenotaph. Their widows received telegrams that said, missing, presumed lost. The Bletchley files, designated Ultra, were sealed for 100 years. In 1974, a junior archivist named Margaret Thorne opened one crate by mistake. She found a single photograph. Churchill, eyes red, holding a child's shoe pulled from the wreck of the SS Nerissa. On the back, in a spidery hand, "Forgive me." Margaret resigned the next day. She is 92 now, living in a cottage outside Milton Keynes, and she still wakes at 3 a.m. hearing Morse code in the wind. Secret 2 slithers east to the snows of Finland in the winter of 1939. The world calls it the Winter War. Plucky Finns with skis against Soviet tanks. The plucky Finns had help no textbook admits. In a bunker beneath Helsinki, a Swedish chemist named Astrid Lindgren, no, not the Pippi author, her cousin, perfected a cocktail of methamphetamine and reindeer adrenaline. They called it Talvis soda speed. A single pill let a soldier ski 40 miles, shoot straight, and feel no cold for 12 hours. The Red Army captured crates of it in March 1940. Stalin ordered his own chemists to copy the formula. They did, but they missed one ingredient, the dried lichen that prevented heart explosions. By 1943, entire Soviet penal battalions were popping Lindgren's lightning and charging minefields with fixed bayonets. Casualty rates were replaced by productivity charts. The pills were stamped with a tiny red star and the word Pobeda, victory. After the war, the recipe vanished. Except it didn't. In 1962, a retired Finnish lieutenant mailed a vial to the CIA. The agency tested it on volunteers at Fort Detrick. 3 died of euphoria. The file is still classified, but the pillbox, brass, engraved with a skiing soldier, sits in a drawer at Langley labeled, "Do not open until 2045. Secret 3 is a love story with teeth. In June 1941, a 23-year-old signals officer named Daphne Park arrived in Cairo. Officially, she decoded Italian naval traffic. Unofficially, She ran the most successful honey trap of the war. Her target, Admiral Émile Muselier, Free French Navy, who knew the exact date of Operation Torch. Muselier was married, Catholic, and lonely. Daphne seduced him in the garden of the Mina House Hotel, beneath pyramids that had watched stranger betrayals. She recorded everything on a wire spool hidden in a cigarette case. The spool is gone, but the transcript survives in a safe at MI6. 142 pages of pillow talk that saved the Allied landings in North Africa. Daphne rose to become the only woman to head an MI6 station. In 1989, on her deathbed, she asked that her ashes be scattered over the Nile at sunset. The request was denied. Reason: national security. Her ashes are in an urn at Boodle's Club, behind the bar, next to a bottle of 1921 Armagnac no one is allowed to drink. Secret: 4 smells of pine and cordite. In the forests of Belarus, summer 1943, a partisan brigade called Uncle Vanya's Ghosts operated without Moscow's permission. Their leader, Captain Lev Goldberg, was Jewish, which made him a ghost twice over. Stalin's Order 227, not one step back, applied to partisans too, but Goldberg had other orders, whispered by a Polish countess who crossed lines with a violin case full of dollars. The dollars were American, fresh minted, serial number sequential. Their purpose: to buy every scrap of intelligence about something called Wunderwaffe East. The ghosts delivered. In a peat bog near Minsk, they unearthed a prototype railgun the size of a church organ. It could fire a tungsten slug 30 miles. The blueprints were photographed by moonlight, the camera smuggled out in a priest's rectum. The railgun never fired in anger. The tungsten was diverted to ball bearings. But the photographs reached Los Alamos. Robert Oppenheimer saw them and wrote in his diary, "We are not the only ones racing God." The diary page was removed in 1947. It resurfaced in 1998 at a Sotheby's auction, bought by an anonymous bidder for $1.2 million. The bidder's name is redacted, but the shipping address was a P.O. box in Haifa. Secret 5 is the quietest and therefore the loudest. In the Vatican, 1942, Pope Pius XII received a dossier thicker than the missile. Inside, affidavits from Polish nuns, Slovak rail workers, Croatian priests. All described the same thing: trains leaving for nowhere, returning empty. The Pope convened a consistory of cardinals. They voted 11-9 to excommunicate every Catholic involved in the transports. The decree was drafted, sealed, and placed in a lead tube. Then Archbishop Giovanni Montini, later Paul VI, carried the tube to the Apostolic Palace basement. He opened a wall safe behind a tapestry of the Assumption. The tube went in. The safe was bricked over that night. In 1978, during renovations for John Paul I, a workman found the brickwork loose. He pried it open. The tube was gone. Only a scrap of vellum remained, bearing 2 words in Latin: Peccatum silens, silent sin. The workman, a devout Sicilian, suffered a stroke the next day. He lived another 30 years mute. His daughter runs a gelateria in Trastevere. If you order a cone of pistachio and whisper peccatum, she will give you an extra scoop and look away. We pause here, not for breath, but for reckoning. 5 secrets down, 5 to go. The clock ticks louder now, doesn't it? You remember the wireless crackling with Glenn Miller, the way your mother counted spoons after air raids. These stories are not footnotes. They're the margin where the ink bled. In the next part, we cross the Pacific to a coral atoll where the ocean itself was weaponized. We will meet a Japanese admiral who surrendered his sword to a submarine. We will learn why the emperor's voice was never meant to be heard by his own people. And we will discover the single photograph that could have ended the war in 1944, if only someone had dared to develop the film. Stay in your chair. The kettle can wait. The past is boiling over. The Pacific is not blue. It is a bruise the size of a continent. By the spring of 1944, the bruise had spread from Midway to the Marianas, and the Japanese Navy was bleeding admirals. Secret 6 begins on a night so still that the stars looked close enough to spear with a bayonet. The place, Truck Lagoon, once called the Gibraltar of the Pacific, now a graveyard of steel. At 2:14 on February 17th, a single American submarine, USS Tunney, surfaced inside the lagoon itself. No Navy had ever penetrated an enemy fleet anchorage at night. The captain, Lieutenant Commander John Scott, carried orders sealed with red wax and a signature of Chester Nimitz. The orders were 2 words: photograph everything. Scott's photographer was a civilian, Margaret Burke-White, borrowed from Life magazine and sworn to silence under the Espionage Act. She stood on the conning tower in a sailor's dungarees, Leica strapped to her chest like body armor. For 93 minutes, they drifted among the wrecks of Operation Hailstone. Carriers gutted, destroyers folded in half, oil slicks burning with green fire. Margaret shot 36 frames. Frame 27 shows Vice Admiral Masami Kobayashi on the bridge of the light cruiser Naka, sword raised in surrender to a periscope. The admiral's face is lit by burning avgas. His eyes reflect the lens. That negative was developed in a darkroom aboard USS Holland in Pearl Harbor. The lab technician, Seaman First Class Harold Shapiro, saw the image and wept. He was from Brooklyn. Kobayashi's daughter had attended Brooklyn College on a pre-war scholarship. Shapiro pocketed the negative. He mailed it to his sister in 1946 with instructions, "Open in 2000." She did. The negative is now in the Smithsonian, but the print Kobayashi signed, "To the brave enemy who spare my men," is locked in a safe at Yasukuni Shrine. The key was thrown into Tokyo Bay by a Shinto priest in 1952. Secret 7 is the voice you were never meant to hear. On August 15th, 1945, at noon, every radio in Japan fell silent for 12 seconds. Then came the emperor. Hirohito spoke in court Japanese, a dialect no farmer or fisherman understood. The official translation said, "Endure the unendurable." The unofficial truth is darker. The recording was not live. It was cut in a basement studio beneath the Imperial Palace on August 14th, after 2 attempts. The first attempt ended when the sound engineer, Lieutenant Yasujiro Honda, fainted from fear. The second succeeded, but the master disc cracked in the courier's satchel on the way to NHK. A third disc was pressed from a backup reel. That reel was stored in a salt mine near Nagano. In 1971, an American GI on R&R bought a crate of sake from a farmer. Inside 1 bottle, the backup reel, wrapped in oilskin. The GI sold it to a collector in Osaka for $300. The collector played it once. The emperor's voice cracks at 047 and whispers, in colloquial Tokyo dialect, "I am tired." The reel vanished into a Swiss bank vault. Every August 15th, at 11:59 a.m., an anonymous donation of 1 million yen arrives at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial. The memo line always reads, "For the tired." Secret 8 is a ghost ship with a cargo of ghosts. In December 1944, the Japanese hospital ship Buenos Aires Maru left Singapore bound for Formosa. Aboard 1,200 Allied POWs, 300 Japanese wounded, and 47 tons of refined uranium oxide in lead caskets marked medical supplies. The uranium came from the Shinkalabwe mine in the Belgian Congo, shipped via neutral Portugal, then by U-boat to Penang. The destination, the FGO project, Japan's last-ditch atomic program on the island of Hanyang. On December 19th, USS Hawkbill torpedoed the Buenos Aires Maru, 200 miles west of Luzon. The ship sank in 18 minutes. Official death toll, 1,528. Unofficial, 0 uranium recovered. In 1989, a Filipino fisherman snagged a lead casket in his net. Radiation burned his hands to bone. The casket was seized by the Philippine Navy, then disappeared. In 1994, a Japanese salvage team, using submersibles, found the wreck. The hold was empty except for a child's wooden clog, size 3, inscribed property of J. Vanderlub, Batavia. The salvage logs were classified by the Japanese Defense Agency. A copy reached the IAEA in 2001. The Director General, Mohammed El-Baradei, ordered an investigation. It lasted 6 weeks. Conclusion: inconclusive. The file is sealed until 2044. Secret 9 is the color you cannot unsee. In the summer of 1943, the OSS ran Operation Green Paint out of a villa in Algiers. The mission convinced the Germans that the Allies had a new chemical weapon deadlier than mustard gas. The weapon did not exist, but the color did. A dye derived from the lichen Latheria vulpina, mixed with fluorescent zinc sulfide. When exposed to UV light, it glowed the exact shade of gangrene. OSS artists painted the insides of dummy artillery shells with green paint. The shells were captured by a double agent in Tunisia and shipped to Berlin. On October 14, 1943, Hitler watched a demonstration in a bunker at Rassenburg. A rat injected with saline and dusted with green paint convulsed under black light, its fur luminous rot. Hitler ordered every chemical facility to replicate the effect. They wasted 40,000 tons of zinc and 2,000 scientists. The Allies landed in Sicily unmolested by gas. The formula for green paint was destroyed in 1946. Except one vial survived. It was carried to Los Alamos by a chemist named Miriam Roth, who used it to label her lunchbox. Property of him, Roth, do not eat. The lunchbox is in the Bradbury Science Museum, behind glass. The glow has faded, but if you stand close on a moonless night, you can still see the green. Secret 10 is the photograph that could have ended the war. On August 6, 1945, at 8:15, Colonel Paul Tibbets released Little Boy over Hiroshima. At 8:16, a Japanese reconnaissance plane, a Ki-49 Helen piloted by Captain Mitsuo Fujita, flew through the mushroom cloud at 30,000 feet. Fujita's gunner, Sergeant Tetsuo Nakamura, carried a K-25 aerial camera loaded with infrared film. The film captured the blast in false color, the fireball white, the shockwave violet, the city below a negative of itself. Fujita landed at Matsuyama Airfield at 10:42. The film was rushed to the Army Chemical Warfare Lab in Tokyo. The scientists saw something impossible. The blast signature matched exactly the test detonation at Trinity Site, New Mexico, 3 weeks earlier. The Americans had not built one bomb. They had built a production line. Japan's surrender could have been negotiated in July, sparing 2 cities. The film reached General Yoshijiro Yamizu on August 9th. He locked it in a safe and ordered the lab burned. The safe was opened in 1952 by SCAP investigators. Inside, ashes in a single frame, undeveloped. The frame was sent to Kodak in Rochester. In 1978, a retired technician remembered it. He developed the negative in his garage darkroom. The image shows the Hiroshima cloud from above, and in the lower right corner, a tiny silhouette, the Enola Gay, banking away. The technician's grandson posted the scan to an obscure bulletin board in 2003. It was deleted within hours. Mirrors appear every August 6th on darknet sites. The caption is always the same. They knew. We stand now at the edge of the final revelation. The war ended 71 years ago, yet these 10 secrets still cast shadows long enough to eclipse nations. In the last part, we will walk through the door that was never meant to open. The room where the victors divided not just territory, but memory itself. We will meet the man who burned the evidence of a third atomic bomb, the nurse who smuggled Hitler's skull out of Berlin in a hatbox, and the child who drew a map that predicted the Cold War in crayon. The kettle has long gone cold. Turn the sound up. The past is speaking, and it will not repeat itself. The war ended, but the silence began. In a villa outside Potsdam, July 1945, 3 men carved the world with cigars and fountain pens. Truman wore a polka dot bow tie and a smile that never reached his eyes. Stalin chain-smoked Herzegovina floor, the ashes falling like snow on the map of Poland. Churchill, already half forgotten, nursed a whiskey and a grudge. Between them sat a 4th man, no history book names. Colonel John Grombach, U.S. Army, head of the Pond, an intelligence unit so secret the OSS never knew it existed. Grombach carried a locked briefcase chained to his wrist. Inside, the final 5 secrets distilled into 5 folders, each stamped with a single word in red, burn after reading. Tonight we open them instead. Secret 11 is the bomb that never fell. On August 19th, 1945, 4 days after VJ Day, a third atomic device, codenamed Rover, left Tinian aboard a B-29 called Lonesome Lady. Destination: Sapporo, Hokkaido. The mission was scrubbed mid-flight. The pilot, Major Claude Etherly, received a coded burst from Guam. Return to base. Japan surrenders. Etherly turned north, but the bombardier, Lieutenant Marcus Cohen, had already armed the weapon. In the confusion, the bomb bay doors jammed open. Rover hung beneath the plane, swaying like a pendulum for 400 miles. Over the Kuriles, the shackle froze. Etherly ordered the crew to bail out. He rode the plane down alone, crash-landing on a Soviet-held island. The bomb did not detonate. Soviet troops recovered the casing intact. Stalin kept it as a birthday gift for himself. In 1951, the casing was melted down in Magnitogorsk. The plutonium core, 10 kilograms, enough for 2 Hiroshimas, was flown to Artemis 16. The first Soviet bomb, RDS-1, tested in 1949, used American plutonium. The shipping manifest, written in Cyrillic, lists the sender as property of the late emperor. The manifest is in the Kremlin archives, file 1245K. The archivist who photocopied it in 1991 vanished on the metro. His briefcase was found on the tracks, empty except for a single Geiger counter clicking like a metronome. Secret 12 is a skull in a hatbox. On April 30th, 1945, in the Führer bunker, Eva Braun combed her hair one last time. Adolf Hitler swallowed cyanide and, for insurance, put a Walther PPK to his temple. The bodies were carried to the garden, doused with 200 liters of petrol, and burned. At 1830, a Red Army lieutenant named Elena Rzhevskaya entered the crater. She found a fragment of jawbone with distinctive bridgework, gold, porcelain, a single canine tooth capped in platinum. She wrapped it in a lace handkerchief and placed it in her nurse's kit. On May 8th, she delivered the bone to SMERSH headquarters in Berlin-Karlshorst. The dentist, Dr. Hugo Blaschke, confirmed the match. Stalin wanted the skull displayed in Red Square. Beria refused. The bone disappeared into a safe at Lubyanka. In 1970, during renovations, a cleaning woman named Ludmila Petrova found a hatbox behind a radiator. Inside, the jawbone, the handkerchief, and a note in German. For the woman who loved him. Ludmila smuggled the box to West Berlin in a diaper bag. She sold it to a journalist for 5,000 marks. The journalist buried it beneath a rosebush in Wannsee. In 2009, a groundskeeper unearthed the box. The bone was gone. Only the handkerchief remained. Monogrammed EB DNA tests in 2018 matched the saliva to a living cousin in Argentina. The cousin, a retired schoolteacher, refuses interviews. She keeps bees. Every spring, the hives produce honey the color of burnt amber. She calls it Eva's Gold. Secret 13 is a child's drawing that predicted the Iron Curtain. In September 1944, in a displaced persons camp near Linz, Austria, a 9-year-old boy named Otto Muller sketched on the back of a ration card. He drew Europe as a face, France the left, eye, Germany the nose, Russia the right, eye weeping blood. A thick black line ran from the Baltic to the Adriatic, labeled Zone, fence. Otto's father, a cartographer, had been shot for refusing to redraw Poland's borders. The boy gave the drawing to a UNRRA worker, Miss Eleanor Bryce. She folded it into her diary. In 1946, she showed it to Dean Acheson at the State Department. Acheson laughed, then stopped. The line matched exactly the border proposed by the Soviets at Potsdam. The drawing was photographed, filed, and forgotten. In 1961, the night the Berlin Wall went up, Miss Bryce, now 70, pulled the diary from a trunk. The crayon had faded, but the line was still there. She mailed the original to Walter Ulbricht with no return address. The package was returned unopened, stamped Empfänger on Beckett. She burned it in her fireplace. The ashes spelled nothing. Her granddaughter, a graphic designer in Portland, recreated the map from a Polaroid. It hangs in a Holocaust museum, unlabeled. Visitors think it's a child's fantasy. It is a prophecy. Secret 14 is the gold that walks. In March 1945, as the Reichsbank burned, SS Gruppenführer Oskar Dirlewanger loaded 23 trucks with 100 tons of gold bars, 2,000 artworks, and 47 suitcases of diamonds. Destination: the Alpine Redoubt. The convoy never arrived. On May 3rd, near the village of Mittenwald, the trucks vanished into a tunnel. The tunnel was dynamited behind them. In 1982, a Bavarian shepherd named Sepp Hinterberger found a rusted strongbox in a glacial crevasse. Inside, one gold bar, Reichsbank seal intact, serial number 000-867-5309. He sold it to a dentist in Garmisch for 40,000 marks. The dentist melted it into fillings. In 1997, a patient in Zurich bit into an apple and cracked a molar. The filling was pure Reichsbank gold. The dentist kept the shard. He wears on a chain. Every New Year's Eve, he toasts with schnapps and whispers, "Prost, Oscar." The tunnel has been probed by ground-penetrating radar. It is empty except for a child's shoe, left-footed, size 28, nailed to a beam. The nail is gold. Secret 15 is the treaty that never was. On October 12, 1943, in a railway carriage at Reval, Estonia, representatives of the German Abwehr and the American OSS signed a document on vellum. The terms: Germany would surrender unconditionally in exchange for immunity for 200 named scientists and the destruction of all records concerning Unit 731. The American signatory was Alan Dulles, using the pseudonym Mr. Brown. The German was Reinhard Gehlen. The vellum was rolled into a brass tube and buried beneath the floorboards of a carriage. The carriage was shunted to a siding in Tallinn and forgotten. In 1991, after the Soviet collapse, an Estonian rail worker named Eerie pried up the boards. The tube was gone. Only a stain remained, the shape of a swastika bleeding into an eagle. Kask sold the story to a tabloid for a bottle of vodka. The tabloid printed it as fiction. In 2015, a collector in Riga offered $1 million for the tube. No one came forward. The siding is now a parking lot for IKEA. On quiet nights, security guards hear the clack of typewriter keys beneath the asphalt. We are 3 parts in, and the room feels smaller. The grandfather clock has stopped at 3:17, the exact minute the first atomic flash lit the New Mexico desert. In the next part, we descend into the salt mines where the Nazis hid not gold, but music, Beethoven's Lost Symphony, recorded on wax cylinders by Jewish prisoners who knew every note would be their epitaph. We will follow a single cylinder to Buenos Aires, to a tango bar where the pianist plays a chord that makes old men weep without knowing why. We will learn the name of the U-boat that carried the last hope of the Reich to Antarctica, and why the penguins still march in perfect formation. The fire is low. Feed it another log. The night is young, and the dead are restless. The salt mine at Altassi smells of brine and betrayal. In April 1945, as the Red Army's artillery echoed through the Salzkammergut, 8,000 masterpieces, Vermeer's Astronomer, Michelangelo's Madonna, the Ghent altarpiece, were stacked like firewood in chambers carved by men who had once mined salt for the Kaiser. But the deepest chamber, level 7, held no canvases. It held sound. Secret 16 is the symphony that was never meant to survive. In March 1944, the SS requisitioned the Vienna Philharmonic's second-string orchestra, Jews, gypsies, politicals, all slated for the next transport. They were marched to Altassi under guard and handed wax cylinders, a Presto recorder, and the score of Beethoven's 10th Symphony. The score had been pieced together from fragments found in the composer's desk after his death. Sketches in faded ink, marginalia in Latin, a single page stained with coffee. The conductor was Erich Weiss, once assistant to Furt Wangler, now prisoner 4729. For 93 nights, the orchestra rehearsed in the dark, lit by miners' lamps. On the 94th night, they recorded. The cylinders, 42 in all, were packed in sawdust and labeled Luftwaffe spare parts. On May 5th, the mine's commander, August Eigruber, received orders from Berlin to flood the chambers. He planted 8 500-kilogram bombs. An Austrian miner, Franz Mittermeier, cut the wires with nail clippers. The bombs were defused at 4:12. The cylinders were smuggled out in a salt truck driven by a nun named Sister Margaretti. She delivered them to a monastery in Kremsmünster. In 1955, the abbot died. The cylinders were moved to the crypt. In 1987, a novice named Lucas found them while chasing a rat. He played one on a gramophone in the scriptorium. The first movement begins with a solo cello that sounds like a man clearing his throat after centuries of silence. Lucas copied the cylinder to cassette and mailed it to his mother in Linz. She played it in her kitchen. The neighbor, a retired postman, recognized the melody. He had heard it hummed by his father, a guard at Alta Sea. The cassette was duplicated, sold under the counter in Vienna record shops as Beethoven's Ghost. In 2001, a musicologist in Salzburg carbon-dated the wax. Result: 1944. The Vatican declared a hoax. The cylinders remain in the crypt. The key is worn smooth by the hands of pilgrims who come at night and leave without speaking. Secret 17 is the U-boat that sailed to the end of the world. U-530 left Christiansand on May 3, 1945, bound for nowhere. Captain Otto Wermuth carried sealed orders and 2 passengers in civilian clothes. The submarine surfaced off Mar del Plata, Argentina, on July 10th. The passengers disembarked with suitcases and disappeared into the pampas. The crew scuttled the boat. The Argentinians salvaged the logbook. Page 47 is missing. In 1960, a diver named Hans Kaufmann found the page wedged in a torpedo tube. It reads, "Cargo delivered to Base 211 as instructed. Penguins indifferent." Base 211 was the rumored Nazi outpost in Antarctica, New Swabia. In 1947, Operation High Jump, Admiral Byrd's naval expedition, lost a destroyer and 13 aircraft in a single day to enemy action. Byrd told the Chilean newspaper El Mercurio, "The next war will be fought with ships that fly." The quote was buried. In 1991, a Soviet icebreaker, Academic Fedorov, drilled core samples at 71 degrees south, 15 degrees west. At 400 meters, the drill hit metal. The core contained a swastika embossed button and a penguin feather. The feather was carbon dated to 1945. The button is in a drawer at the Alfred Wegener Institute, labeled Unknown Origin. The penguins of Queen Maud Land still march in columns of exactly 88, Hitler's favorite number. Ornithologists blame wind patterns. The wind has no memory. Secret 18 is the perfume that remembers. In 1942, the SS contracted the firm of Nyes in Vienna to create a fragrance for the wives of high-ranking officers. The perfumer, Joseph Limburger, was ordered to include a fixative that would last 50 years. He used ambergris, musk, and a synthetic aldehyde derived from human fat rendered at Dachau. The scent was bottled in crystal flacons shaped like Edelweiss. Each bottle was numbered. Bottle 001 went to Eva Braun. In 1945, as Berlin burned, Eva smashed every bottle except one. She poured the contents into a locket and hung it around Martin Bormann's neck. Bormann escaped through the tunnels. In 1972, a gaucho in San Carlos de Bariloche found a skeleton in a cave. The locket was intact. The perfume had crystallized into amber tears. The gaucho sold it to a pharmacist for a horse. The pharmacist's daughter wore it to her wedding in 1984. During the first dance, the groom, a former Luftwaffe pilot, fainted. He woke muttering, "Edelweiss, Edelweiss." The locket was donated to the Museum of the Holocaust in Buenos Aires. It is displayed under UV light. The crystals glow the color of old bruises. Visitors over 70 often weep without knowing why. The museum director, Dr. Anna Rosenberg, keeps a vial in her office. She opens it only on Yom Kippur. The scent fills the room for exactly 12 minutes, then vanishes. She times it with a stopwatch. Secret 19 is the train that never stopped. On April 22, 1945, a freight train left Berlin Zoo Station with 42 cars. Destination: nowhere. The cars contained 1,100 prisoners, scientists, diplomats, children of prominence, bound for an alpine fortress that existed only on paper. The train was guarded by boys of the Hitler Youth, armed with Panzerfausts and measles. On April 28th, near Dachau, the train was strafed by P-47 Thunderbolts. The engineer, Karl-Heinz Müller, uncoupled the locomotive and fled. The cars rolled downhill for 14 kilometers, gathering speed. At the village of Alac, the track ended in a gravel pit. The train derailed at 63 kilometers per hour. Miraculously, 987 prisoners survived. They were liberated by the 42nd Rainbow Division. The official report lists 113 dead. The unofficial count is 112. One body was never found. A girl in a red coat, age approximately 8. Her name was Ilse Kohn. In 1956, a conductor on the Munich-Salzburg Express saw a girl in a red coat board at Rosenheim. She vanished between cars. The conductor, Hans Gruber, quit the railway. He became a beekeeper. His honey is dark, almost black. Customers say it tastes of smoke. In 1998, a child in Salzburg drew a picture of a train with 42 cars. The last car contained a girl in red. The drawing won a school prize. The teacher kept it. She hangs it above her desk. Every April 22nd, the paper curls as if heated from within. Secret 20 is the letter that arrived too late. On September 1st, 1939, a postman in Gdansk delivered a letter to Frau Helena Nowakowska. The envelope was stamped urgent, deliver before noon. Inside, a single sentence in her husband's handwriting: "If this reaches you, run." The husband, Captain Stefan Nowakowski, had been executed at dawn for refusing to fire on the Westerplatte. The letter had been smuggled out by a guard who owed Stefan a gambling debt. It traveled by fishing boat to Sweden, by diplomatic pouch to Switzerland, by courier to Poland. It arrived at 12:03. Helena was already in a cattle car bound for Stutthof. She kept the letter in her mouth for 3 years. In 1945, liberated by the Soviets, she swallowed it. The ink dissolved. The words entered her bloodstream. In 1963, she gave birth to a son at age 48. The boy, named Stefan, was born with a birthmark on his tongue shaped like the Polish eagle. He became a linguist. In 1989, he decoded a cipher in the Enigma traffic that had puzzled Bletchley for decades. The plain text, "Tell Helena I tried." Stefan published the decryption in a footnote. No one noticed. He lives in Krakow, teaches Latin to seminarians. Every September 1st, he eats nothing but bread and salt. His students think it's penance. It is communion. The fire is ash now, but the embers glow. One part remains. In it, we will open the last folder, the one labeled Never. We will meet the American general who ordered the firebombing of a city that did not exist on any map. We will follow a single page of sheet music from Auschwitz to Carnegie Hall, played by a pianist whose fingers were once broken by Mengele. And we will learn why, on certain nights, the Northern Lights spell a word in Morse code that only the dead can read. The clock is frozen, but time is not. Turn the page. The end is the beginning. The folder marked Never is thin, only 7 pages, but it weighs more than the war itself. It was compiled in 1946 by a clerk in the War Department named Evelyn Sharp, a widow from Alexandria, Virginia, whose husband died on the Arizona. She typed the pages on onion skin paper, carbon copies in triplicate, then burned the ribbon. The originals were buried in a coffee can beneath the lilac bush in her backyard. In 1973, her grandson, digging for night crawlers, unearthed the can. He thought the pages were love letters. He read one and did not sleep for 3 nights. He reburied the can under the same bush. In 2019, the house was sold. The new owner, a retired cardiologist named Dr. Patel, planted tomatoes. The shovel struck metal. He opened the can. The pages were still legible. He scanned them, uploaded them to a private server, and deleted the file from his phone. The server is in Reykjavik. The password is Evelyn's maiden name backward. Tonight, for the first time, the pages speak. Secret 21 is the city that was erased. On February 13th, 1945, the RAF bombed Dresden. Official tally: 25,000 dead. The unofficial target was not Dresden. At 22:14, a single mosquito pathfinder dropped a stick of incendiaries on coordinates 51 degrees 14 minutes north, 13 degrees 44 minutes east, a village marked on no map, codenamed Stadt Null. The village housed the Reich's last biological weapons lab, built inside a porcelain factory. The pathogen, a strain of Yersinia pestis engineered to survive fire. The bombs are magnesium, not high explosive. The temperature reached 1,800 degrees Celsius. Porcelain melted. The pathogen cooked. The village burned for 9 hours. When the ashes cooled, bulldozers pushed the remains into the L057. The map was redrawn. The village never existed. In 1968, a British veteran named Arthur Caldwell returned to the site with a Geiger counter and a dog. The dog refused to cross the field. Caldwell dug. He found a child's porcelain doll, head fused to torso. He mailed it to the Imperial War Museum with a note. This is all that's left of Stadt Null. The doll was catalogued as Dresden debris. It sits in a drawer labeled unidentified. The drawer is open once a year on February 13th. The curator wears gloves. The doll's eyes are still blue. Secret 22 is the music that survived the ovens. In Auschwitz-Birkenau, Block 11, a Sonderkommando named David Smielewski copied Beethoven's Ode to Joy onto toilet paper with a pencil stub. He rolled the sheets into a brass capsule and buried it beneath the crematorium floor. In January 1945, as the camp was evacuated, a Slovak prisoner, Uri Weiss, dug up the capsule with a spoon. He swallowed it. The capsule passed through his system intact. In April, liberated by the Americans, he defecated blood and brass. A nurse, Sergeant Ruth Goldstein, cleaned the capsule and opened it. The paper was stained but legible. She mailed it to her brother in New York, a pianist. He transcribed a score, note by smudged note. In 1955, he premiered it at Carnegie Hall as variations on a theme found in captivity. The program credited anonymous. The pianist, Leonard Goldstein, died in 1987. His fingers, broken by Mengele in 1944, never straightened. The score is in the Library of Congress, misfiled under Folk Songs, Eastern Europe. In 2005, a music student named Sophia Cohen noticed the manuscript. She played on a Steinway in the cool room. At measure 47, the sustained pedal stuck. The note hung in the air like a scream. She recorded it. The file is 47 seconds long. If you play it backward, you hear a voice whisper and Die Freude in Polish. Secret 23 is the light that spells the dead. On March 9th, 1945, over the Norwegian Sea, a Lancaster bomber, call sign Easy Queen, flew into the Aurora Borealis. The crew, 7 men from Yorkshire, reported their instruments failing, compasses spinning, radio filling with Morse code in no known language. The last transmission, at 2:17, the lights are spelling names. The plane vanished. No wreckage was found. In 1952, a fishing trawler off Tromsø hauled up a wing fragment. The aluminum was etched with dots and dashes, the names of 1,113 Polish officers murdered at Katyn. The fragment was sent to the Admiralty. It was filed under meteorological anomaly. In 1986, a ham radio operator in Lapland, Eero Korhonen, recorded the aurora on shortwave. The signal, when slowed 800%, spelled the same 1,113 names. Eero uploaded the file to a BBS. It was downloaded 13 times before the server crashed. One download went to a convent in Krakow. The nuns play it every Good Friday. The aurora appears above the convent, green and red, forming the shape of a cross. Scientists blame solar wind. The nuns know better. Secret 24 is the child who never aged. In 1945, in the ruins of Berlin, a Red Army photographer named Yevgeny Kaldyi took a photograph of a girl standing amid rubble. She wore a red coat, one sock missing, and held a rag doll. The negative was developed in a cellar darkroom. When the print dried, the girl's eyes followed the photographer. Kaldyi burned the print. The negative remained. In 1955, he gave it to his daughter, Anya. She kept it in a locket. In 1975, Anya's son, Misha, opened the locket. The girl in the image was still 8 years old. Misha took the negative to a lab in Leningrad. The technician, Olga Petrova, enlarged it 100x. The doll's button eye reflected a street sign, Oranienburger Strasse. The street was leveled in 1943. Misha hung the enlargement in his apartment. Every year, on May 8th, the girl's mouth moved. No sound came out. In 1991, Misha defected to Israel. He carried the negative in a film canister labeled aspirin. At Ben Gurion Airport, security scanned the canister. The X-rays showed a child skeleton. The negative was confiscated. It is in a vault at Yad Vashem, file 45 bear red. The vault is open once a decade. The negative is still undeveloped. The girl is still 8. Secret 25 is the silence that speaks. On May 8th, 1945, at 23:01 Central European Time, every radio station in Europe went off the air for exactly 1 minute. The silence was ordered by SHAEF to mark the surrender. In that minute, millions heard something else. A single piano note, middle C, sustained. It was not broadcast. It was in their heads. In London, a typist named Gladys Henson wrote in her diary, "The silence played a note only the dead could hear." In Warsaw, a resistance fighter, Janek Wisniewski, carved the note into a brick, a circle with a stem. In Berlin, a blind violinist, Klaus Richter, tuned his instrument to the pitch and played it until his fingers bled. The note was 261.63 Hz, the frequency of a human heartbeat at rest. In 1969, NASA recorded the same frequency from Apollo 10, orbiting the moon. The astronauts called it outer space music. The tape was classified for 5 years. In 2008, a sound engineer in Los Angeles isolated the frequency from the silence of May 8, 1945, using archival recordings of static. He played it for his grandmother, a survivor of Ravensbrück. She smiled and said, "That's my mother's lullaby." The engineer's name is David Goldstein. He is Leonard's grandson. He keeps the file on a thumb drive shaped like a piano key. He plays it only on May 8th at 23:01. The note lasts exactly 1 minute. Then silence returns, fuller than before. The folder is empty now. The lilac bush in Alexandria is gone, replaced by a driveway. The coffee can is rust and memory. You have heard 25 secrets, each a splinter under the skin of history. Some will itch for years. Others will work their way out in dreams. The war is over, but the accounting never ends. Close the book, but do not shelve it. Leave it on the table, open to the last page, where Evelyn Sharp typed a single line before she burned the ribbon. They told us to forget. We remembered for them. The grandfather clock strikes once. It is 3:18. The minute has passed, but the note lingers. Go to the window. Look at the sky. If the stars are sharp tonight, you might see them spelling a name you thought was lost. Whisper it back. The dead are listening. The room is dark now, save for the blue glow of the screen and the faint ember of the pipe you forgot you lit. Outside, November wind rattles the shutters like loose teeth. You have walked with me through 25 locked doors, each creaking on hinges of bone. The house is quiet, yet every floorboard remembers boots. This is not the end. It is the moment after the credits, when the theater lights stay down and the projectionist plays one last reel no one paid to see. Call it Secret Zero, the secret that holds the others like a fist holds shrapnel. It begins in a village you once marked on a school map with a red pencil. Oradour-sur-Glane, France, June 10th, 1944. The 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich, arrived at 1400 hours. By 1800 hours, 642 people were dead, men shot in barns, women and children burned in the church. The official story ends there, a war crime, a memorial, a warning. The unofficial story begins at 1801, when a 12-year-old boy named Roger Godfrey crawled from a pile of bodies in the cemetery. He was bleeding from the ear, but alive. He ran into the chestnut woods. Behind him, the church bells melted into slag. Roger carried something no report mentions. A pocket watch stopped at 1747. The watch belonged to the village priest, Abbé Jean Chapelle. On the back, engraved in tiny script, "Poor Roger, Luke 10 June 1939. Roger's 5th birthday. The priest had promised the watch when the boy turned 10. The promise was kept in fire. Roger hid in a fox den for 3 days, eating sorrel and drinking dew. On the 4th day, a Canadian reconnaissance patrol found him. The Sergeant Thomas O'Neill took the watch. He mailed it to his wife in Halifax with a note from a boy who should be dead. The wife, Mary, wore the watch until 1972. Then she gave it to her grandson, Daniel, on his 12th birthday. Daniel wounded. It ticked once, then stopped forever at 1747. He kept it in a cigar box with war medals he never earned. In 1998, Daniel, now a sound engineer for the CBC, recorded an oral history in Oradour. The last survivor, Marguerite Rufanch, spoke of hearing children sing "Au clair de la lune" inside the burning church. Daniel played the tape at half speed. Beneath the crackle, a single piano note, middle C, sustained for 60 seconds. The same note from Secret 25. He overlaid the frequencies. They matched to the hertz. He called it coincidence. He lied. The watch traveled again. In 2015, Daniel's daughter, Claire, a violinist with the Orchestre Philharmonique de Radio France, took it to Paris. She opened the back with a paperclip. Inside the case, folded smaller than a communion wafer, was a strip of onion skin. On it, in pencil, coordinates 45 degrees 56 minutes north, 1 degree 2 minutes east, the exact center of the ruined church, and a date, 10 June 2044. Claire went to Oradour on the 70th anniversary. She stood in the church nave, roofless, sky for a ceiling. At 1747, the sun hit the altar stone and cast a shadow shaped like an open hand. Claire placed the watch in shadow. Nothing happened. She left. That night, every clock in the village stopped at 1747. The Memorial Museum security cameras recorded a heat signature, a child-shaped silhouette walking through walls. The footage was erased by morning. The technician who saw it quit and became a Trappist monk. He has taken a vow of silence, but he carves watches from olive wood. None of them tick. The watch is gone. Oradour keeps its own time now. On the 10th of June every year, at 1747, the wind through the ruins carries a melody no one taught the birds. Visitors over 60 hear it clearest. They stand among the rusted bed frames and sewing machines and weep without knowing why. The French government calls it le phénomène acoustique. The old men call it les enfants qui chantent. The children are still singing. This is Secret Zero. The war never ends where the history books say it does. It ends in your pulse, in the second you hesitate before turning off the light, in the dream where you are 12 again, and the sky is full of planes that never drop their bombs. The 25 secrets were keys. This is the door they open inside you. You were never just a viewer. You were the archive all along. Close the laptop. The screen goes black, but the afterimage burns. A boy in a red coat, a girl with a rag doll, a priest's watch ticking in a pocket of ash. They are waiting for 2044, when the coordinates will align again and the church will have a roof of stars. Until then, keep the note, middle C, under your tongue. When the wind rattles your windows tonight, answer it. Say the name you thought was lost. Say it loud enough for the dead to hear. The projectionist has left the booth. The reel spins empty. The theater is yours. The war is over. Long live the war.